Good morning. I am Kevin Price. Delighted to be with you. Going to spend some time talking to you about you and your business. And I tell you, when I want to get information about what's happening on the macro level and how it affects me on a micro level, I really enjoy talking to Paul Carroll, and he's with Efficient Wealth Management. That's efficientwealthmanagement.com. I love the guests that you bring, but I love it when we can occasionally, just you and I, chat about what's happening on the business front and on the headlines and how it relates to us as decision makers. But before you go into some of those headlines, I understand you got a seminar coming up, and I want you to take a minute to talk about that.
Well, Kevin, good morning, and thank you. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on the webinar, but thanks for bringing that up. We are having, for our airline clients, on both July 21st and October the 13th, a 1-hour webinar called Platform for Retirement. And it's specifically aimed at the United Airlines pilots. And if anyone of those are listening, all they need to do is go to ualwebinar.com for all the information. We're having one July 21st at 10:30 a.m. and October 13th, 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to talk about the United benefits, what's going on at the airline right now. You just have to open the paper to hear the horror stories, and what they can do to protect their wealth and plan for their retirement.
Very good, very good. So, and of course, looking at the papers, looking at the headlines, there's a lot all across the board, a lot of scary stuff. You know, there's first of all, a bazaar happening that came with the stock market this week. Talk a little bit about that. And I found it coincidental, speaking of United, that both Wall Street and United had glitches in their systems, which obviously conspiracy theorists love that.
They do. On the United, simply put, United has a single point of failure problem with their weight and balance software. I'm not going to express an opinion because that'll just upset some people, but having a single point of failure after the fourth event might suggest that there are leadership issues that should be addressed. Yeah. With the stock market, there's a whole other thing going on, and that is the New York Stock Exchange was offline for 4 hours yesterday. And that's great dramatic news for the TV. But what a lot of people don't realize today is that the vast majority of trading goes offline. It's not on the New York Stock Exchange. And in fact, if you look at the trading volume, it was only slightly impacted by the fact that physical exchange was shut down. So it created a fear factor that was completely unwarranted. And it's important because a lot of our listeners are investors, and they don't understand, or maybe they do, that fear and greed move the market in the short term. But it's underlying valuations that move it in the long term. And yesterday, if it was anything, it was an opportunity to rebalance and maybe even buy some stuff cheap. Sure enough, when the market opened today, it bounced right back. And that would be exactly what we'd predict.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so that's good to know. And so you think it was just, and you do agree, like the vast majority of what I'm hearing out there, that the two were completely unrelated.
Yeah, totally unrelated. The stock market has been sold to a private company, New York Stock Exchange, and arguably they've cut corners on costs. Of course, they would disagree with that. But it's a technical failure, and we're seeing technical failures throughout the economy. Even in my firm, it's one of my number one concerns. How do we protect against technical failures and cybercrime? And we've talked about cybercrime extensively in previous shows. Yep.
Another big, speaking of crime, what about Greece?
Yeah.
What a disaster.
Oh, my goodness. We sent out a great, I should send it to you, great video about a week ago about Grexit. Grexit is the contraction of the Greek exit from the euro. Greece has really painted itself into a corner that I don't know how they're going to get out of this. For whatever reason, the fundamental problems are the euro is a single currency for a currency zone that doesn't include sovereignty. And what does that mean in English? In the United States, we have poor states like Mississippi, wealthy states like Texas. And we have a federal government with sovereignty that can, in essence, tax Texans more because they make more and send transfers of wealth to states like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, where the net GDP is very low and average income is very low. And they do it through a number of mechanisms, including infrastructure subsidies, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all sorts of mechanisms that allow this transfer of wealth. That doesn't exist in Europe. Mm-hmm. Also, the U.S. federal government can say, these are the rules. That doesn't exist in Europe. So now we have the Greeks borrowing money that they can't pay back. And we, without judging that, because there was a big crash, the issue is the creditors are saying, we will give you help, but you really need to unshackle your economy. You really need to create the groundwork for future growth. And it's not an unreasonable request. Of course, the Greeks happen to know that there is no painless way out for the rest of Europe, and they're putting a gun to Europe's head. The real problem, the conundrum today, is if the Europeans back down, they run the risk of the other pigs, that's Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, the other pigs doing the same thing. And in fact, what's going on with the severe left-wing parties in those other three countries is they're already making noises about playing the same game, which would be a tragedy because in Spain, they've made labor market reforms, they've made banking reforms, and their economy is showing a recovery.
Yeah.
So it would be devastating for that country if the left wing was victorious in Greece. So there's a no good way out. If Europe backs down, it's probably the worst possible outcome in the long run, even if it helps in the short term.
No question about it. I think that unless, there is this perspective, particularly being purported by supply-side economists. I had one on a show this week. Dr. Brian Dimitrovic was on my show, and he said, the only upside maybe is if Greece went on its own, created an economic, environment that was lower in regulations and lower in taxes than the competitors, and become a hotspot. But, with a prime minister who's an avowed communist, I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not throwing names at him. He called himself a communist in that position. That's not likely to happen. And to me, I see this as a play on the part of that prime minister who asked his people to vote against that referendum to really create the chaos that leads to true totalitarianism. That's what I think the play was.
Of course, it's hard to know what's going on in his mind, but the proof of the pudding in terms that they would never do that is that's what the Europeans asked them to do.
Right.
That's exactly what they said. They essentially said, we'll defer the payback 20 years.
20 years.
If you'll just make it easier to hire and fire so that small businesses can grow and put a lid on taxes. And the third thing they asked for were pension concessions that were not as severe as those adopted in Germany. So the Germans are angry. They changed their retirement age to the mid-60s, and they're asking the Greeks to go from 50, 55 to like 58. I mean, you got to admit that if you've taken the pill and you want to have the debtor take just half that pill so that they could get a free ride, you would be angry if they said no. And they are. The Germans are furious.
As well they should be. A lot of this, I've spoken to historians of Middle European historians, and a lot of this is just really even World War II guilt that the Germans have. They're incredibly generous. That continent would slip into an abyss if it weren't for Germany. And, a lot of that has to do, they're still paying penance for World War II, I think, in a lot of their decision-making.
Yeah, the Germans have behaved well since World War II. And there's some very interesting things going on that actually are being lost in the drama of the news. And one of the most interesting things going on in Europe is that some of these countries have made these reforms. Mm-hmm. And the conversation today is there's no question as to what works. This is very different from 20 years ago when there was a serious debate between communism, socialism, capitalism. If you notice, the undercurrent here is there isn't a debate.
No, there's not.
There's a consensus.
There's a consensus unless you listen to the media. The media pretends that there's a debate still out there. But look at Iceland. Iceland decided that businesses weren't too big to fail. They let huge corporations implode. And as a result, they are now on course for 2% unemployment. To have the best unemployment environment in the Western world, probably in the world. That's what happens when you make tough decisions and you let freedom rule. Meanwhile, we have codified mediocrity by even having a too big to fail list in this country.
Right. In fact, 2008 was a wonderful laboratory environment that exists maybe once, maybe never in history before, where we had such a catastrophic event and different countries tried different textbook ideas, and now we can go and go, wow, that worked, and just like we thought, that one didn't.
Yeah.
So it's taken a lot of the debate out of the conversation. I actually believe a lot of good is coming out of this. But, if it bleeds, it leads on the news.
Yeah, I wish the media knew something about economics. I really do. All they know about is, to me, it seems like all they are is demagogues with political agendas, from what I can tell. And that's someone who's been in media his entire adult life. That's all I've done. And I get sickened by what my industry does. Well, I like to think I'm different from that, so that helps, I hope. But Paul Carroll, he is phenomenal at what he does. You can hear why we obviously like him here on our program. And his company is Efficient Wealth Management, efficientwealthmanagement.com. Have a great rest of your day, sir.
Thank you. You make it a great day.
When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there, like this interview at usdailyreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter.